Good evening, everyone. You are in the spotlight with Brian Gardner for this Thursday, March the 1st, 2018. Good to have you all here for our first show in, 2 weeks? Over 2 weeks now? 2 weeks, something like that. First show of March, our only show of this week. Hope everything's been going well for all of you. Before I get off on a tangent and everything, let's as always remind you of how you can interact and contribute to the show, have your voice heard by emailing us at itspotlight411@gmail.com. You can also follow us and tweet us at itspotlight411. Remember to use the hashtag itspotlight411 when talking about our show on Twitter or when you're tweeting on any of us. And of course on Facebook, search In the Spotlight 411. And then make sure that you like our fan page so you can follow us. Now, not right now, she's sleeping. Sorry, my wife is talking to me on live podcasting. Okay. So we'll wait for my co-host to come on, which who knows when that will be. When he'll grace us with his presence. So a couple of things here. First of all, you're gonna have to bear with me because I still have a little bit of a cold thing going on. So if I start randomly coughing, please bear with me. That's a big reason why we didn't do a show on Tuesday, and another see, right on cue. And another reason why we're probably not going to do too long of a show tonight. See, right on cue. So there's that. Anyway, we're such parents already. It's ridiculous. All right, so a lot to talk about here. This is not going to be your usual show tonight because there's this, when you're off air for as long as we just were off air, and I think we do this after we have like a 2-week period off. We try to go, oh, well, over the last 2 weeks, this happened. We can't possibly make up for everything that's taken place in the 2 weeks that we've been off. Okay, we can't do it. It's just not possible. So, we're going to have to just kind of go on and just kind of go with what's going on. It is what it is. First of all, obviously, I did not plan to not do shows last week or this past Tuesday. Okay, it happened all very abruptly. It didn't take a lot for people to figure out what was really going on, even before I posted on social media. So that's, I told you all along, if we didn't do a show, something was going down, and you all kind of figured out what it was. So no puzzle pieces to put together or anything. So there was that. Now, here's the thing, okay? Like I said, it was very abrupt. My wife had to be induced, and this was like last Monday, a week before her due date. We had the baby that Tuesday, and then we were out of the hospital on Thursday. So very long week, very long weekend. But then, obviously it's always tremendously difficult when you first come home with the baby. Long nights, you all know all the deal is. But what made this even more difficult was that I had apparently gotten sick. I did not realize I was sick, but I apparently was. I ended up with a severe sinus infection in my chest, which is why I'm still doing the cough thing and everything, so bear with me again. I found I found this out on Thursday, which means I couldn't really do much with the baby for the first few days. So that makes it difficult as well. So it wasn't the most fun first few days, not as much as I would have thought it would be. But we powered through, and here we are, and things are getting better by the day. And we have a beautiful little girl, which at some point in the show you will see. I'm not going to bring her over here until she's awake because that seems counterproductive. And I want to try to get this show in before she falls asleep. I'd like to have her come out at the end, because then at least I don't have to worry about her being awake during the show. Now, to that end, because it's going to be very difficult for at least the first few weeks here, because my wife needs to get sleep too. and we kind of have this shift thing that we're doing. And my shift is during this show. So I'm technically doing this show, but I'm also watching my daughter. So my Spotlight fans out there, you're going to have to be aware that there's going to be times when we're going to have to be interrupted. Or Mike's going to have to take over. If I'm by myself, I might have to turn the camera off and the sound off for a few minutes. We don't have commercials, so that makes it a little difficult. So there's going to be interruptions for a little bit. Now, I won't just drop off. If I'm by myself and I have to go, I'll just say, all right, folks, got to go for a few minutes. Hang in there. We'll be back in a little bit. Now, that I'm not going to leave you all hanging for a half hour, okay, or even 20 minutes. Maybe like 5 minutes or so or something like that, just long enough for me to deal with whatever has to be dealt with. Keep in mind, if it's a feeding, that means I might have to feed the baby on the air, which is going to happen. I'm trying to manage this the best I can. It is what it is. Now, most times, hopefully, Mike can take the reins and just go with things for a little bit until I can come back on. So, we'll kind of go back and forth with this until things get adjusted enough where, we can do. I mean, it doesn't have to be like that. But for right now, that's kind of what we have to do. Now, we are in March. And March is usually a month where we do one show anyway. And that's what we're going to do. Starting with this show, we're only going to do one show a week through the whole month of March. We might even extend it into April. I'm not sure yet. So from now on, we're going to be only doing one show. And I'm thinking we're just going to keep it on Thursday night. Actually, no, pardon me. No, we're going to keep it on Tuesday nights because we don't want to go up against the tournament game. So tonight we're on Thursday. Next week we'll be on Tuesdays through the entire month of March. And that's what we've done over the years. So that's not out of the ordinary. And it also makes it easier on me for these first few weeks too. So, so that's what, again, that's kind of, it kind of plays to us right now that we're in March because it makes it easier for us just doing one show for right now. So yeah, we'll only be doing one show. Now, I want you all to keep in mind something very important. Starting on Tuesday, we're going to move to 8 o'clock. Now, that means that my co-host won't join us till later in the show. It's just the way it's just easier. So now, look, the way that we do things right now, I do my thing, Mike does his thing. Our back and forth is kind of limited. We do it. It's just kind of like, it's there, it's in between, but most of the time I give my opinion, he gives his opinion, and then the crossover doesn't happen much unless it happens on certain topics. I usually wait on those topics until he's, involved anyway. So, so basically what we're going to do is that we're going to have, I just lost my train of thought. Father brain. Sorry. Wow. I just lost my train of thought. I hate that. I really do. I hate that. Oh, so basically what we'll do is I will use that first hour or so to talk about the things that Mike usually is not involved with or doesn't care about talking about. We'll get them out of the way. And then I'll leave the stuff that I know that me and him can kind of go back and forth about, that stuff that, we can actually have a good, thorough discussion about for when he's on the show. And then that way we can we can end the show on a high note and have that discussion and, mix things up a little bit. I think that works better. And I kind of teased that for the last couple months that we were going to go a little earlier. So starting on Tuesday, we'll start at 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern time. I will start things off, and then Mike will join us later, and we'll do that for the time being, for the early part of the at least for the time being. So that's something that we'll have going on too. So next week, again, Tuesday, we'll be doing Tuesdays, our only show. Okay, so for the whole month of March, we'll only be airing on Tuesday, and we'll be airing at 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern time. Okay, that's until further notice. All right, so please keep that in mind. So that's a couple changes to let you all know about. So there you go. All right. So again, I had a lot to tell y'all. One other thing I got to tell you is that tonight we're going to do things a little differently because, and this is, it's funny how sometimes things can push you into doing things that you've been wanting to do for a little bit. And obviously, I've been trying to kind of nudge us in a direction where we kind of, I want us to be a little more concise and succinct and kind of just talk about something and then move on. One of the things that we do is look, I'm just as much of a person that does this as anybody else. Okay, tangents are a bad thing sometimes. Okay, and one of the things that I'm going to really try to do going forward, so that we can get to as many things as possible, especially with us doing only one show through March, which we always do. That's nothing new, but we have a lot to get to, and the only way we're going to get to all of it is if we move on and get what we discuss what's relevant and move on. And that's something that I'm going to work on, and I've done that already in my notes a little bit, where you look at a topic and say, you know what, this is what we have to talk about here, and that's it. It doesn't have to have a full background. We don't have to, if it's a big story, people already know about it. Let's give our opinion. Let's go into the details relevant to our opinions, and let's move on with our lives. That's kind of what has to happen. So I'm going to try to stay to that. And do that, because I think that will help us out a lot and keep, especially me, from being off on a tangent, because I go off on a lot of tangents. And then all of a sudden you look up and 20, 25 minutes have passed by and you're like, well, geez, I've been talking about this that long. Really, I mean, unless we have a very slow news day, okay, or unless we decide that we're going to do a whole show dedicated to something, there's no reason to spend more than 10 minutes on anything. I don't care what it is. I mean, again, within reason. I mean, college basketball, when we do the brackets and stuff, that's a little bit different. But a general news topic or something doesn't have to go that long. So that way we can get to other things and all that kind of stuff. So, and one other thing too that you can all look forward to during the tournament. One of the things I'm going to try to do is something I've been trying to do for a few years. I'm going to try to do it again. Is kind of like these live Insta reactions to the games, whether it's the conference tournaments or the NCAA tournament games. I'm going to try to do some of that, or at least once a day, maybe at the end of all the games, maybe like a quick little video or something. I'm going to try to do something. And I'll let you all know what as I go along through social media, if I post anything or whatever. But yeah, I want to try to do that this year. And I think I have the diligence to do that this year. So let me see if I can actually do it. But as for tonight, to the end of what I just discussed, we're going to be very general tonight. One of the things that we were doing when we went off the air a couple weeks ago was the bracket bugle. We're kind of going to do it, but we're going to be very general. We're going to use the same stuff that we usually do, but we're not going to go team by team. It's going to be more of a general, like, here's where we're at right now. Here's what's on the bubble. This is what we're looking at this week and going into conference tournament week next week. That's where we're at. So we'll do a little bit with that. I'm going to talk really quickly about the NBA All-Star stuff, very briefly, like maybe a minute and a half, because I just want to bring up, because a couple people asked me about my thoughts on it. And that's all the sports stuff, because again, we can't go back and talk about everything that's taken place in 2 weeks. We just can't do it. Entertainment-wise, I'm going to do the box office, but again, very general, very quick, because again, we can't go back through 2 weeks. There's not much to talk about other than Black Panther, really. So, There's a real Marvel thing that happened today. We'll briefly touch on that. That was interesting. There's been a lot of wrestling stuff. We can't get to all of it. Obviously, we were supposed to do an Elimination Chamber show last week. We couldn't do it. So we'll do a little bit of general wrestling stuff and kind of bring everything into it and have some fun with that. And that's going to be all we do. So it's not going to be a very long thing because the way we're going to do it's going to be kind of general. But I'm sure people are getting a glimpse of baby and mommy over there. But anyway, so we'll do things generally tonight, and then kind of ease our way back into things on Tuesday, kind of go full on back into the mix a little bit. So, and I know that my co-host is on the air. Mike, you're in the spotlight.
I'm eating dinner, so I'm going to continue to eat while you talk.
Oh, wow. Yikes. Woo. Okay. Guess what kind of day he had, everybody. Not a good one, just for the record. So, all right. Now, like I said before, we're going to be very quick with some of these things. Let me do the entertainment stuff first. Let me do the box office stuff first. And I'm going to be very quick with this, and you're going to all be surprised by how quick that I'm actually going to be with this, because I think right now there just isn't a whole lot to talk about. Obviously, it's been a record-breaking few weeks for Black Panther. Breaking records left and right. The all-time February record, which Deadpool had set, was broken. It's on pace to be the highest-grossing Marvel movie of all time. It's beaten Avengers' 10-day. I mean, it's what it's done has been nothing short of amazing. and that's what happens when you have a special event movie. This movie, as it was going on, as it got closer to its release date, it gained traction, it gained momentum, it became this phenomenon, and that's what happened. And that's culturally, socially, generationally, like Star Wars did, Force Awakens did a couple years back, like Avengers did in 2012. Sometimes a movie strikes a chord and it does something. And this one, obviously, especially from a cultural standpoint, for African Americans and what it represented, and the cast and everything that came with it, it's incredible. First of all, I've seen the movie, and we'll talk about it at a later date. It's a wonderful movie, and it really is revolutionary in what it does, and it's very, it is gonna change things for Hollywood. It really is, and it has to, and it's a good thing. It's a good thing. It's a really good thing, and we'll see what happens going forward. But from a box office standpoint, first of all, it's helped the box office get off to a tremendous start in its first 2 months. Second of all, again, all the records is broken, and what it means for the future, and really talk about for Marvel what it does to its portfolio, because again, this goes back to something that we've talked about over the last couple of years. I mean, Black Panther means far more culturally, obviously, but these are characters that nobody thought could make this kind of money. Black Panther, Ant-Man, Doctor Strange. I mean, these are characters that nobody thought could make this kind of money, and look what they're doing. And then people saying that comic book movies are fatigued. It's not. Comic book movies are never going to be fatigued. How much they make and what they do is always going to be dependent on how good the movie is, and if interest is there. The bottom line, and Marvel usually has that going for it. So, Black Panther's had an amazing 2 weeks. No doubt it'll be #1 again this weekend, despite the competition of Red Sparrow, which will probably do okay. Other than that, when we last talked, we talked about 50 Shades Freed and everything, and those movies were doing what they were supposed to do. Other than Black Panther, The movie that's still kind of a storyline is The Greatest Showman, which is the highest grossing original musical, at least in the domestically of all time. I don't know if it'll get to that worldwide total, but it could. It continues to do very good business. It's got legs on par with Titanic, which is stunning. So you got that going on. So that's kind of like the other mini story. That movie continuing to do very well at the box office. So that's kind of where you're at. It's the Black Panther. For a while it was Jumanji, but now it's still Greatest Showman. So it's a good, nice little time at the box office now with some big movies, with a big movie doing well, and a couple good, really good stories over the last couple months, continue to do well. So especially Greatest Showman. So it's a good time at the box office. It really is. Now, like I said, this weekend you have a new release in Red Sparrow that people think perhaps could challenge Black Panther. I don't anticipate it, especially given how it held up last weekend. But it should, in some way, shape, or form, carve out its own little niche at the box office. And another movie that's coming out this weekend is Death Wish. So you got two new releases this weekend. In Death Wish, which will only open in 2,847 theaters, and then Red Sparrow, which will open in 3,056. Now, Red Sparrow is R-rated, so that's going to hold it back. I mean, $69 million budget should be okay. And Death Wish is R-rated, $30 million budget. So again, maybe at least break even. Both those movies are going to be held back by their rating. So Black Panther is going to get number one back. It's no question about it. But again, you think that, I mean, at least Red Sparrow should do reasonably well. But I would say Black Panther is going to get number one back, no problem at all. And based on its hold, you could probably see it making around 40, 50 million, maybe even above that. That seems like a pretty good bet. And then you might see Red Sparrow pulling around 20 or so. It's been well promoted. Could even do a little bit better than that, but I wouldn't go too much higher. And Death Wish might come in around 10 or so. I didn't talk about these two movies, but Game Night and Annihilation came out last weekend too. Game Night did reasonably well, which I expected it to. It's been a long time since you had a comedy. And there's a lot of good potential comedies this year. So that one did reasonably well. And I expect to do okay this weekend. Annihilation kind of bombed, and I kind of thought it would. I just didn't think it hooked anybody. You didn't see enough marketing for it. It just didn't hook anybody. So, that's, of course, the Natalie Portman vehicle. So, I don't expect much from that movie this weekend. So I think you'll see Black Panther around 50 million or so, Red Sparrow around maybe 20, maybe a little over that. Game Night probably around 12 million or so. Death Wish maybe around 10. Annihilation maybe around 8. Peter Rabbit maybe around 7 or so. 50 Shades Freed around 5 or so million. Everything else should be under $5 million for this weekend. Everything else should be under $5 million for this weekend. So it's going to be another weekend that belongs to Black Panther. Red Sparrow doing at least decent enough business to get by. So again, the story is Black Panther, and then of course you'll probably see Greatest Showman continue to do very well, hanging there around maybe 1-2 million or so. But again, even though that's a nice story, Black Panther's got the headlines now. So, and you figure you'll get the headlines again coming out of this weekend. So, but as we get further into March, the competition should get to become more plentiful, especially the weekend of the 9th, when you have 4 major new releases, including a release that's expected to do very well in Disney's A Wrinkle in Time. And then as you go further through the month, you got Tomb Raider, Pacific Rim Uprising, and as you go into April, you got Blockers. So there's a lot of, and Ready Player One. So a lot of big movies coming up, and to kind of take the reins a little bit from Black Panther. So, I feel pretty safe in saying that Black Panther gets #1 this weekend, and then, next weekend could belong to A Wrinkle in Time, which in this be another Disney movie, but that's kind of what happens in these last couple of years with the box office. A lot of times when it gets this time of year, from like February on, it's usually about a Disney movie handing the box office to another Disney movie. So, the nature of of Hollywood nowadays. So that's the story at the box office. Now I don't know if he's done eating, but Mike, I'm sure do you have any thoughts on the box office?
I'm not done eating, but I will say the reason why people thought you should probably take something for that. The reason why people thought characters like Black Panther and Hank Pym wouldn't do well at the box office is because the way their comic books were written, these characters were arguably unlikable.
Right.
They weren't very well liked, and they seemed to be favorites of comic book writers who didn't know how to make these characters not crappy, which is something apparently Marvel's movie writers don't have, because the Black Panther of the films is infinitely more likable and less arrogant than the Black Panther of the comics. God, the Black Panther of the comics is like a shittier version of Wolverine. Like if you took away all of Wolverine's charisma, there you have Black Panther. But anyway, yeah, Black Panther's gonna do great. No surprise there. That's all I really have to say. I just want to finish.
Now, before we move out of the box office talk, briefly let me, as I said in the show description, preview this Sunday's Academy Awards, which Jimmy Kimmel will once again host, and he'll do a good job. First of all, will they get a rating? Yes. Will it be on par with last year? Probably, maybe a little lower. The one thing that's going to hold the rating up is the fact that they have maybe 2 movies in the Best Picture lineup that people give a crap about, and that's Dunkirk and Get Out. If it wasn't for those 2 movies, I don't think you would pop much of a rating for the show. They just wouldn't. But honestly, what you see is what you get. Gary Oldman's probably going to win. Sam Rockwell's probably going to win. I would say probably Allison Janney for supporting actress. Probably. Frances McDormand's going to win actress. And Best Picture is probably going to go to Shape of Water, with Guillermo del Toro winning director. That's probably what you're going to get. It went from a very unpredictable award season to probably being pretty predictable on Sunday night. I don't have much to say about it. I'm not really particularly excited about it. I will probably watch it, only because I just do every year, because I feel like, I just like to see how it all goes down. And look, last year rewarded me for that because they had the complete controversial ending there last year. So, I mean, it's supposed to be a celebration of film. We know they do a really bad job with that. They don't represent all the films. I'm not going to go on the tirade that I always go on about this. All I'm just going to say is this. If you're going into Sunday thinking you're going to get any big surprises, you're not. If you go into Sunday expecting the predictable, you'll be rewarded for that. I shouldn't say reward for that. You will get what you expect. If you go into Sunday expecting it to be very much like the Golden Globes, where so much is going to be about the Me Too movement, and then, that's exactly what's going to happen. And look, as it should, it's a platform, and, it's a good platform to use. So you'll see that kind of be once again the centerpiece of the entire evening, just like it was at the Golden Globes. So I don't have much expectation for Sunday other than what we've seen all award season. So expect a pretty predictable result and show on Sunday. That's all I can really say about it. So when I meant Oscar preview, I really meant about 3 minutes of me just saying, guess what? It's going to probably be boring. It's going to be pretty predictable. It is what it is. That's the truth. It is what it is. It's I don't think there's really any true races going into the show on Sunday night. I think they're all pretty much set, and I think it's going to all be a predictable result. I think you're not going to see any name. There's not going to be a single award given on Sunday night that people are going to. I don't think I'm going to see any jaw droppers on Sunday night. The Golden Globes, we always have that going for them. The Oscars, 90% of the time, don't, because by the time we've gotten through the entire award season, we usually have an idea. But still, they're having some Oscar years where we've had a true surprise. Very, very rare that happens. And this year, I don't think it will. So if you want to, I'm not saying don't watch it, even though we bash the Oscars all the time, and, it might sound like we don't think you should. I'm not telling people they shouldn't watch it, but I'm also just giving people the honest to God truth. I don't think there's going to be a whole lot interesting about it as far as, intrigue and suspense. There's not going to be a whole lot of interesting stuff going on. That's pretty much what I think is going to happen. So anyway, the Oscars Sunday, for better or worse. Be interested to check them out. If not, I can't really blame you, but and then let me also touch on a little piece of news today I texted Mike about, which I thought was really cool. And I have to give him a lot of credit for doing this. And I don't think they did this for the reason that I think is the best reason to do it, which is to get ahead of spoilers. But regardless, I think it's a good idea. Today it was announced that Avengers Infinity War will be opening a week earlier. It's been moved from May 6th to April 27th. So the summer movie season now moves up about a week, which we've seen that before. Fast and Furious kind of did something similar. But now, why did they do this? The thought is they did this because Deadpool moved up a couple weeks, 2 months ago, when they started getting wind that the Han Solo movie might not do particularly well. They no longer feared that competition. They moved Deadpool up, knowing full well that it's its second weekend, it would be taking on the Han Solo movie exclusively. They no longer feared that, so they felt okay about moving Deadpool up. The feeling is that Avengers Infinity War was moved up, so it gives them an extra week on its own before Deadpool 2 comes out. So, and I can see that. I think that's smart. But in all honesty, and Mike, you and me were talking about this off the air. The reason to do this was is something that they should have done years ago, which is by doing this, you roll out in the U.S. the same time as many of these international territories. So at least for the first week, the week before it gets released in the U.S., you don't have to avoid spoilers on social media, bootleg copies all over the internet. It's going to come out along with some of these other countries. So at least you don't have to worry about that before the opening week in the U.S.
So something we've said they should do for years.
Right.
Which is, yes, okay, so they want to give Deadpool an extra week, and they don't fear Han Solo and yada, 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 who cares? But the thing is that with almost every single Marvel film, almost every single one, there has been spoilers, there's been this and that. You can find bootleg copies on the internet because Marvel for years were determined to open internationally first and then get to pop the number in the US. And I think to an extent it has cannibalized their budgets. And they did it with Black Panther 2. Spoilers.
Right.
So I think it's finally time where they're like, yeah, for the biggest movie we have in our history, the biggest two-parter in our history, maybe we should open it up the same time as all of these major international markets that usually spoil their fucking movie. Oh, I wonder why they didn't think of this 17 movies ago. But hey, here we are. It's been a long journey, but we finally made it today.
Right.
You should probably get some sleep.
Who, me?
No, the other guy is coughing and sneezing on air.
Oh, Jesus. I'm fine. Believe me, I'm fine.
Yeah, whatever. Okay.
So anyway,
Wink.
wow. So you're right. It should have been done. Now, the funny thing was, I always thought, well, I didn't always think this, but I thought for sure they would do this after what happened with Age of Ultron. When it's so, remember when they thought it was going to do the same thing that the first Avengers did, and when it didn't, everybody's like, "Oh, well, this happened because of spoilers, and this didn't, you know." And then they thought the same thing with Civil War. Well, it didn't do as well as they thought because of spoilers. Well, then why didn't you release it a week early?
They did the same thing with Guardians of the Galaxy too.
Right.
And you know what? They did. You kind of did the same thing with Black Panther. Imagine how much more money it could have made.
That's pretty amazing.
Had you not opened it a week early overseas, where everyone's like, herp a derp a derp, let's go to the cinema and record Black Panther. Boop a doop a doop. All right, cheerio, mate. There's the Black Panther. He's talking to this other British guy, and he's like, "Ooh, Wakanda, boom." Yes. Imagine what they could have had.
And you're right. You're right.
And this is even keeping into consideration that Black Panther was a cultural movie.
Right.
They could have made so much more money had they just released it a week early or moved the international release a week later.
And like I said,
for so many smart people in the room, it's just still such a dumb decision. It took them this long.
They'll find out April 27th. Because if they end up getting a huge number on par with what the first Avengers did, they're going to realize that, well, hey, maybe we should have been doing this all along. Because that's what happened with the first Avengers. Yes, things leaked out. But that movie was such an event movie that it didn't matter. It overcame that. Just like Black Panther overcame it. But that doesn't still mean you didn't leave money on the table. If you had released it a week earlier with the international rollout, you probably would have made even more money than you did opening weekend. So a big piece of news, and the way that they did it was really, really good. With Downey Jr. and everybody on Twitter, and it was really cool what they did. And now the pressure's on because they only have one trailer. And if you look at it, it's March 1st. This is coming out April 27th. It's less than 2 months away, and you only have one trailer. So, granted, you haven't spoiled much of the movie, but at the same time, you have to get another trailer, which I imagine they will, because I imagine they'll start selling tickets next week. So, that's usually when they'll drop a new trailer. So, I imagine there's a new trailer coming next week. I think and I figured that anyway. A Wrinkle in Time's coming out, so that figured to be the movie they put it with, but we'll see. So that was a big piece of news. So we've done a lot with movies and entertainment. Let's jump out of that. And let's jump into some wrestling first. Because the basketball stuff I think will go a little bit with. Obviously we had Elimination Chamber on Sunday. And this week has had a lot of news. A lot of news. And last week while we were off the air, there was an interesting Raw last week with the Gauntlet match, which Seth Rollins was just incredible in. Incredible performance by him, and also, of course, Braun Strowman and everybody really involved with that match. That was a tremendous match, and kudos to WWE for putting that on. That was great. And I thought they had a great night at Elimination Chamber as well. I thought it was a good night of match. Everything was obviously very predictable, but I thought it was an okay show. We all knew it was going to happen in the main event. They made Braun Strowman look good, but why go through all that if he's not going to win? I don't know, but and then you fast forward to Monday night. We're moving Cena on to Fastlane, where he'll now be in the WWE title match. So I texted Mike earlier that day. I thought I had heard a different plan where he was going to face Shinsuke Nakamura at Fastlane, but I guess they changed that. So now he's in the six-pack challenge. And there's a lot of stuff going on with Cena. We'll talk a little bit about that too. It seems like right now there's, one day he's facing Rey Mysterio and one day he's facing The Undertaker. Now apparently he's back to facing The Undertaker. So nobody really knows what they're going with this. I don't know if they're just leaking stuff out to kind of confuse people because it's a predictable thing. I don't know. There's been a lot of changes. There's a lot of stuff going on with Brock Lesnar. He was supposed to show up at Monday Night Raw. He didn't. Everybody thought it was a work because Roman's promo was apparently scripted. It was scripted, but this whole thing wasn't a work for Brock Lesnar. He didn't show up. Now, here's the thing. If you've been following the newswire, Brock Lesnar is out of contract dates. And apparently he is not interested in, working in good faith. He's more interested in talking about his new contract if they want to give him one. So there's a feeling that maybe Brock doesn't even show up until he signs a new contract. And if he doesn't, does he even show up for WrestleMania? And to that end, there's talk that Braun Strowman, everybody thought Braun Strowman was going to be the backup for Roman Reigns through those steroid allegations come into play. And that could still be. But apparently Braun Strowman could also be the backup for Brock Lesnar should he not show up at WrestleMania. And for those wondering what Braun Strowman's going to be doing if he's not in the Universal title match, right now he's currently booked to be in the Intercontinental title match with Miz, Finn Balor, Seth Rollins, and Elias. That's where he is right now. That's apparently the match they're going with right now, unless they have to move Strowman off into the Universal title match or into a match with Roman or whatever. And again, as I mentioned earlier, there's been a lot of stuff with Cena. Right now, it appears Cena Undertaker is still on, but there's been rumors about Cena and Rey Mysterio as well. So either way, it looks like Rey Mysterio might be working a match at WrestleMania. Whether it's John Cena or not, we'll see. But that's been a big story this week as well. Obviously, it looks like Kurt Angle is going to be Ronda Rousey's partner. They've been setting that angle up. We've been hearing about that match for the last couple weeks. Triple H and Stephanie versus Ronda and a partner of her choice. It looks like it's going to be Kurt Angle. So at least we got that part of the equation. They will be setting up Asuka, Charlotte, and Alexa and Nia probably after next week. I just don't think they want to spoil Fastlane. They also developed Sasha and Bayley. She'll also be in that match as well. As for SmackDown, other than AJ and Nakamura, and apparently Cena and Undertaker, if it takes place, will take place on SmackDown. The build will take place on SmackDown, not on Raw. So that's a little bit of a swerve. But that's apparently what will happen. But yeah, and you figure you'll get Owens and Zayn probably, and who knows if they do anything with Shane McMahon. Doesn't look like they might not. Doesn't look like they will, which is kind of surprising. But so a lot of things are coming into focus, but there's also a lot more uncertainty than I think many of us thought we were going to have at this point. As we, 1 week out of Fastlane and about 5 weeks out of WrestleMania. I think most of us thought we'd have a little bit more clarity than we do, but there's been circumstances. Brock Lesnar's contract, which, is tenuous. He took a picture with Dana White on Sunday night in Vegas, and Dana thinks he's coming back to UFC. So there's that. And then you got the Roman Reigns steroid stuff and, Undertaker, and it's a lot of things out there. There's a lot of things going on. So it's been a very busy week or two in WWE. Very busy week. And there's a couple other little things, but before I get to those other things, let me open up things up for Mike and get his thoughts on some of the things that have been going on with WWE. Last week we had the Gauntlet match and obviously Elimination Chamber and all this news that's going on out there. A lot of stuff going on, Mike.
Aware. I was not aware of the Brock Lesnar stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I was not aware that he was out of dates. It makes me wonder how many dates did they negotiate him for if they didn't know, if they thought they had enough for, the road to WrestleMania, and suddenly they don't.
I guess what usually happens is usually at this time, like every year before Mania, there's a certain amount of dates he has in a year, right? And I guess they usually do run out every year because they always use them more than they probably should. But usually they're able to negotiate with him and just add extra dates. Well, because his contract's up, he's not interested in that until he gets a deal, until he gets a new deal with them where he can maximize his money. You see what I'm saying? So
he's going to maximize his money. But the thing is, if you knew this was going to be a problem again,
right,
then the one thing you should have done prior to this is get the goddamn world title off of Brock Lesnar prior to him fucking leaving.
Exactly. 100%.
Because according to most sources, for the chances of Brock Lesnar actually resigning after WrestleMania, if he makes it to WrestleMania, are slim to none. For now. Brock Lesnar's pretty much done with wrestling for the moment.
Right.
So, but the problem is he's your universal. You thought this would be a great goddamn idea.
Right.
You had chances. You had chances at Great Balls of Fire, and I can't believe there's still a pay-per-view named that. You had chances at Great Balls of Fire to put that on Joe. You had a chance at the September pay-per-view to put that on Braun Strowman. You had a chance at SummerSlam to put it on literally one of three other guys. You had a chance at the Royal Rumble to put it on Braun Strowman or Kane. But you're sacrificing everything for Roman's big glory moment, and then you run out of dates. And Brock Lesnar, who's normally like, oh, okay, I'll re-sign for an ass ton of money. Brock Lesnar's like, no, I'm hanging with Dana White now. And suddenly WWE's in a Jeff Jarrett situation. Isn't that ironic? Where, let's be honest here. They're going to have to pay an ass ton of money to get Brock Lesnar to WrestleMania to job to Roman Reigns. And there's a chance that doesn't even happen. And at this point, you have to say, well, oh shit, maybe we should have put the title on Braun Strowman. Because one more Roman coronation isn't going to mean jack shit. So WWE's made its bed and they're lying in it because they gave Brock Lesnar all the power. And when you give a guy who doesn't give a shit about pro wrestling all of the power, well, he's going to use it to make himself a little bit richer and before he decides to go off and do what he actually wants to do, which turns out to be punching people in the face. But then again, Brock Lesnar also has this upcoming suspension in Las Vegas for using steroids. What are they going to do? Yeah. Well, it doesn't matter. Brock Lesnar can go to WrestleMania, shoot on Roman, pretty much drop the title on him and walk away. Brock Lesnar doesn't care. He's Brock Lesnar. Doesn't give a shit. So WWE has made their own bed, and they were given chance after chance after chance. The first chance you had to make sure this happened was at last year's WrestleMania, where all you had to do is not put the title on Goldberg. All you had to do is not put the title on Goldberg. You leave the title on Kevin Owens. Kevin Owens versus Jericho is your WrestleMania Raw Universal title match. And suddenly the title's still on the show every fucking week. Wow. This is just brain surgery. I'm a little tired of this nonsense, but right now WWE's in a bed of their own making. Oh well. And the problem I have is if, okay, Brock Lesnar decides to say, F this, I'm going into training camp. I don't care how for WrestleMania. Here's your title back. I pooped on it. Okay, so you move Braun Strowman. Are you going to use that again for another Roman Reigns coronation? Or are you going to do the right thing and put the title on Braun Strowman? Which, surprisingly, not even surprisingly, based on the last year, this is the moment. Because either Braun's going to win the Intercontinental title, or he's going to be in the biggest Raw match.
Right.
Whatever you do with Braun, he's got to win. Because Braun is on the edge. He's teetering. Because WWE has made Braun Strowman into everything they wanted Roman Reigns to be. But anyways, Elimination Chamber was fine. It was just very predictable. And I thought, it was what it was. Like, we knew Asuka was not going to lose to Nia Jax. I'm surprised they let Nia get as much as they did. I'm surprised they gave Asuka as much of a fluke victory as they did. But hey, whatever. Bliss wins the Chamber. It was a fine match, but predictable. Look, and this goes back to the other thing. Braun Strowman eliminates every other participant in the men's chamber match, which was, by all accounts, a really good match. It was a very good match. Roman eliminates Braun. Who in the backstage in their right mind thought, after everything Braun Strowman did in that match, having Roman pin Braun, who thought the general audience would cheer Roman Reigns? Who thought, hey, do you know who I respect and who had a great run in the chamber, did everything else? Roman Reigns. Who thought that? There's only one guy on this earth who thought that. Oh, the crowd's going to cheer Roman because he eliminated Braun, who eliminated everybody else. Yeah, there's only one guy on this earth who thought that. So you know what? Bet of your own making. Bet of your own making.
Yep.
And the SmackDown match is now a six-pack challenge because John Cena is now in it. Okay, so what? So what? We all know AJ Styles is going to win it. Might pin John Cena now. He might pin John Cena just to further the Cena storyline. Who's Cena going to wrestle at WrestleMania? Well, sure as shit ain't Shinsuke Nakamura. So is he going to wrestle Undertaker or is he going to wrestle Rey Mysterio? Well, here's the thing. If I were Cena, I'd put over either of those guys because, as I told you when you texted me, oh, it might be Rey Mysterio. I'm like, John Cena owes Rey Mysterio a win. Because many people remember that tournament where Rey Mysterio wins the title and John Cena, like the great guy and good friend he is, challenges a tired Rey Mysterio for a title match. Takes advantage of his good friend and Heart of a Lion champion and beats Rey Mysterio only hours after he had won the title in a grueling match against The Miz.
Yep.
John Cena, what a good guy in wrestling anyway. What a good guy. He has treated all of his friends in wrestling with such regard, high regard. Yeah, so he kind of owes Rey Mysterio a win. Not that that means anything in wrestling, but hey, why not? So yeah, here we go.
You know,
Is it going to be Rey? Is it going to be Undertaker? Anyways,
if Rey doesn't face Cena, there's a lot of people, and there's been rumors because Rey looks like he's going to work WrestleMania. It looks like they're going to get this done. There's been a lot of rumors that he's going to face the NXT champion at Mania if it's not Cena.
he's going to face Andrade Cien Almas.
If it's not Cena, that's the rumor. That's the rumor.
If Almas isn't, then Almas had better be champion past WrestleMania because that's the only match that makes sense. What are you going to have? Rey Mysterio versus Aleister Black?
Yeah.
Rey Mysterio versus Lars Sullivan? Come on.
It's a good idea.
It is a good idea. It kind of puts the NXT title on a different position. It kind of really makes Andrade Cien Almas, who's going to be your, is probably going to be your Latin heavyweight star for the foreseeable future.
Again, that's just a rumor at this point, but because right now, some people think it's Rey and Cena. Some people think it's Cena and Undertaker. Some people think it won't be Rey at all. Who knows? Who knows? Couple other little things. Big Show did an interview today. He said he will be back for WrestleMania. So we will be seeing Big Show soon. Also, apparently, WWE is in talks with Neville about coming back in April. So there's some news there. We heard about this back in November as well, and nothing came of it. But it looks like we could see Neville back in April. And another piece of news, at Tuesday night SmackDown, there were Fox executives there. Apparently, Fox wants WWE really, really bad. And they made a pitch for Raw to be on Fox and SmackDown to be on FS1. And they're offering a pretty big amount of money. I don't know the number, but they put together a big package to rival USA. Raw would go back down to 2 hours. And it'd be a pretty big contract. And so it looks like there's going to be a bidding war for WWE. So we'll see what happens. Although I don't mind the idea of going back to 2-hour Raws.
I don't mind that.
But SmackDown and FS1's kind of a bad idea, I think.
Yep.
That'd be my drawback, but hey, you can't go wrong. Fox is more exposure than USA. So
on Fox Sports 1.
But yeah, we'll see. The thing is that Fox thinks they're going to lose UFC, so they want something to replace UFC. If they don't lose UFC, they're perfectly content to have UFC and WWE, because apparently I think it's cheaper programming than what they do. A lot of the stuff they do. So interesting. Very interesting. Especially in light of the fact that Disney is in the process of buying Fox, so technically Disney would have WWE. So kind of a interesting little what do you call it? Circle, if you will. So been very, very busy in wrestling, very, very busy in WWE. And of course it likely will continue that way all the way up to WrestleMania. So it'll be interesting next week. I don't think Brock Lesnar was ever scheduled for next week, so I don't think you have to worry about that next week. But the week after, he was scheduled. So we'll see if he makes his next date, supposed scheduled advertised date. Because again, he doesn't have any dates left. I think they were just going to continue to add, like if they had him advertised, just going to add that date and pay him or whatever they're going to do. But that didn't. They're going to do that on Monday, and that didn't work. So we'll see if he shows up for his next advertised date. And And of course, next week, WWE Fastlane will take place, the SmackDown exclusive pay-per-view, which will be the last SmackDown exclusive pay-per-view before they go back to dual branded pay-per-views after WrestleMania. So should be a big pay-per-view next week, and that's the last pay-per-view on the way to WrestleMania. So should be interesting to see what happens coming out of that. No doubt we'll probably get the final answers to this our puzzle as far as what WrestleMania will be, especially with the Cena program and such. So we will see what happens over these next few days and weeks here. So, all right, so that's all the wrestling stuff. Want to kind of get into that. We did good with that. As we go in, let's jump into sports. I said I want to bring up the NBA stuff real quick. I want me to just do that really quick before we do the basketball, college basketball stuff and the show. I did watch the NBA All-Star stuff. It was a good event. The rookie sophomore thing was good, and the celebrity stuff, all that stuff's always good. The Saturday night was great. The dunk competition had a little bit of pop, but not a whole lot. The skill stuff was fun. I thought they had a good Saturday night. They always do. All right, even if the dunk competition leaves a lot to be desired, they always find a way to make something entertaining about it. The game itself, I will give them credit. The changes that they made seemed to help. I did see a little bit more urgency. I did see more passion. It wasn't amazing, but it was a much more tolerable game. So at the very least, they've added something to the game. I don't know what else they can do to make it even better, but it was an improvement. It was an improvement. So I will give them that. It was an improvement. So all in all, I thought it was a pretty good event. We're heading down the stretch here in the NBA season, and there's a lot of stuff going on, injuries and stuff like that, and we'll talk about those things along the way. But one of the things that is going to be a big source, even in the NBA, of discussion is what's going on in the NCAA with the whole controversy with, obviously, with the, what's going on with Sean Miller and what's going on, the whole big NCAA basketball controversy. It's not just a college basketball thing. It's an NBA thing. It's going to be talked about in both perspectives. So, and that's one of the things that we will talk about. We won't do it tonight, but as we go on down the stretch here, not down the stretch, but as we go on here, especially around Final Four week, if we always do a big NCAA thing around that time, we will do one. And obviously this year will be focused on this scandal. We will do one. And we will talk about it, not just from the college basketball perspective, but also from an NBA perspective as well, because it needs to be talked about from that perspective as well. But it's important to mention that in addition to all the stuff, all the usual stuff that's going on in the NBA and all, the injuries and playoff push and all that, this is something that's there too. I've seen people saying, "Oh, I don't understand why they're bringing it into this. I don't understand why they're talking about it on NBA shows." Why wouldn't they? Why wouldn't they? It ties into the NBA. It affects the NBA. So I couldn't believe the amount of people that were wondering why, and people from the NBA were talking like, why wouldn't they? Why wouldn't they? So it's not just a college basketball thing; it's an NBA thing. It's an NFL thing. From the football perspective too, because remember this is about college athletics in general, and about athletics in general in this country. From the transition from college athletics to pros and all the underhanded stuff that goes on because that's involved with it. There's a lot of layers to it. It's a lot of layers to it, and we're finding that out little by little more each day. So, it's important to talk about from the NBA perspective as well. We will do that along the way, no doubt about it. And on that note, I didn't put in the show description, but it needs to be discussed. I mean, we're going to talk about bubble teams, but the big story has been the scandal. And, last week there was a report from Yahoo that dropped a bunch of names from Duke, Kansas, Michigan State, Arizona. I could go on. And the majority of those players, I think maybe all but like 2, are playing. They were evaluated by each program individually because the NCAA said, oh, no. We'll let the teams decide whether they play or not. That's what the NCAA decided to do, which I think is all of a sudden now they're all laissez-faire about everything. So, pretty much all but 2 of these players played. I think San Diego State and another team held their players back just to be on the safe side, which guess what I think was smart, to be honest. But yeah. So these players are all playing. And I understand that some of these violations were not really big deals, at least to many people. But still, I mean, come on. We've been dealing with this for the last few years. Players have had to sit. They haven't been able to play for stupid reasons. And even if you think that these violations that came out in this report were stupid reasons, you would think these players wouldn't be allowed to play. Other players have sat for the same reasons or similar reasons. Why all of a sudden now are these players being allowed to play? It just surprised me to see so many of them allowed to play. Now, obviously, the big bombshell was Saturday night when it was revealed that Arizona coach Sean Miller was caught on a wiretap. And obviously the whole 100K and everything that's going on with that. And the bigger shock to me, because I've said off the air to Mike all along, I felt like Sean Miller was somebody that eventually was going to get caught doing something. But the big shock to me is that Sean Miller did not coach Saturday night, which was the right move. But we're sitting here on Thursday night. Sean Miller was never suspended. He has not been fired. Arizona announced today that they will not be firing him because they don't see any evidence of wrongdoing. Not evidence, but they don't think there's been any wrongdoing. He will remain with the university. The player in question involved with this particular situation is still playing. So it's the status quo at Arizona. So Sean Miller not fired. Player not sitting on the bench. Now, you all know the story. You heard what the wiretap caught. I mean, why? How is this happening? How is he not at least suspended? How is Sean Miller at least not suspended indefinitely? How is this player on the court? I mean, I just got done talking about how I felt like the majority of those players that were on that list shouldn't have been playing. Not because I don't, again, do I think they should? In theory, I think they should be playing, but also I've seen players sat for less or for similar reasons. And now all of a sudden it's okay for them not to sit. But over the years, Mike knows this. We've seen players told they cannot play for similar or even stupider reasons. But now, it's up to the universities, and the universities all just go, oh, we looked at it, they can play. And then here's a player at Arizona. You all know about the wiretap. You all know what was heard on that. He's still being allowed to play. Okay? When 100K is involved. And the coach that got caught on a wiretap as being involved in this whole transaction, this whole situation, has not even been suspended since this got out on Saturday. And there's no sign at all of him being fired. That this university comes out today, despite the fact that it's alumni and alma mater alma maters and everybody is telling them to fire this guy and been telling them that before this news got out. Despite all that, he's still a coach. And they're claiming that he's going to still be their coach. I mean, help me with this, Mike. How does he still have his job, and how is this player still playing?
How am I going to help you with this? Because I'm going to be honest with you. Sean Miller, coach of Arizona, was caught on tape saying, Sean Miller, coach at Arizona, I'm going to pay this kid $100,000 so he could play for me at Arizona, which by the NCAA's bylaws is wholeheartedly illegal. He was caught on tape. Excuse me. They have an audio clip of this motherfucker saying something along those lines. Programs have been given the death penalty for less.
Yeah.
When I say less, I mean for less. They have Arizona dead to rights. So not only did the kid play all week, for the rest of the weekend and all week, but Sean Miller's still not fired. Sean Miller should be fired, should be blackballed, and should never be allowed to coach in college again. This is the this would be the ruling of the NCAA of literally, let's say, 5 years ago. Am I wrong? Are you wrong? The NCAA would have burned Arizona at the stake for less than what the FBI, and who, by the way, the FBI are pretty good at their job, and especially when it comes to this. And by the way, the FBI has been investigating corruption in college sports, and they have Sean Miller dead to rights. I can't not say that enough. They have Sean Miller with his dick out, pretty much. They have him red-handed, white-handed, blue-handed, green-handed. And Arizona still hasn't fired him. The NCAA still hasn't taken any action. And look, for a lot of these players in this Yahoo article, it was a little bit as much as them getting food. And I'm surprised John Calipari hasn't kind of transitioned into this, but Jay Bilas certainly has. This should re-raise the discussion of college players, not just basketball, not just football, but NCAA athletes. As long as you're under the NCAA bylaws, as long as you're playing under the NCAA regulation, should be paid for their performance, right, or at least allowed to make some money off of their image and number. They should be allowed to go into a sports store and do an autograph signing for a couple hours and make a couple $100. They should be allowed to do a signing so they could be allowed to eat. But that's a tangent, and I don't want to go on a tangent because you said no tangents. That's great.
Hey, I've been good tonight.
Sure, but that should be where the discussion is. But that discussion can only take place if Sean Miller and his freaking corrupt ass is fired, terminated, and blackballed. Sean Miller should be coaching in the G League, next year. That's the developmental league for everybody who isn't aware in the NBA. And this kid from Arizona who took the $100,000, and look, LeBron James said something to that effect too. And to be fair, I can't blame LeBron. And I don't even blame this kid. If you're poor and somebody's offering you more money than most of your family's ever seen in your life, what are you going to do? You're going to take it. I don't even blame this kid for taking it. I don't even blame Sean Miller for offering it. But the problem is, by the NCAA regulations, it's hella illegal, and Sean Miller should be fired and blackballed. And this kid should be sitting and essentially, at this point, preparing for the NBA draft. Because let's be honest here, this kid's going to be a top 25 pick. So, it's cut and dry. By the NCAA standards, it's cut and dry. But none of these players are sitting except for two. This kid certainly isn't. The hell is wrong with you? I'm pretty sure the NCAA is long overdue for a change in leadership.
Oh, yeah.
Because clearly Mark Emmert, a corrupt piece of shit, if there ever was one, really shouldn't be the head of the NCAA anymore. Mark Emmert, who we must note again, is a corrupt piece of shit. Let's add incompetent. He's an incompetent, corrupt piece of shit. Mark Emmert needs to be gone. You need a change in leadership. And if more information comes out that all this happened under your watch, what are you going to do? But if you're Mark Emmert, an incompetent, dumbass piece of shit, and corrupt, he's probably going to stay put, unfortunately. But if you're Mark Emmert, it's like, yeah, you should be fired at this point. As for Sean Miller, who is caught on tape telling people to give this kid $100,000 to come play for Arizona, should be fired.
Yeah. You done?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I lost the feed for a second. All right. So yeah. And by the way, apparently Sean Miller got an standing ovation tonight from Arizona fans. So, there you go. And again, Mark Emmert has said the schools can deal with this whole situation the way they want to deal with it. Which I think is hilarious, considering the NCAA usually pokes its nose in things it shouldn't be involved in. And now, when this scandal comes out, now it's, well, let the schools deal with it. So, interesting. All right, so I wanted to talk about that. Last thing for tonight, we're going to look at these bubble teams. But unlike what we usually do, we're not going to go, obviously we always use ESPN Bubble Watch. We're not going to go over every team. We're just going to kind of do a general bubble type deal. I'm just going to do like a free form discussion about it because let's be honest here. We're losing a couple weeks here. We kind of lost the bracket bugle, and next week is conference tournament week. So we're almost at the end here. So let's not belabor the point and, do like a longer segment than we really have to. So, we'll look at what we have left. And keep in mind, the Big Ten tournament started yesterday because they're doing it a week earlier because of the MSG, so you can have the tournament there. Things are on the way there already. Today you had Wisconsin beat Maryland. Michigan beat Iowa. So, you will have some some games to note there. And here's the thing about that though, and I already mentioned this already. This is what makes it very, very difficult. If you're a Big Ten team, you're done. And, if you're a bubble team, you're gonna see teams be able to improve their standing next week while you won't be. It's like being in a golf tournament and being already in the clubhouse and watching other guys still play. You feel helpless. So that's kind of a negative. But nonetheless, it is what it is. The Big Ten tournament's on the way. Obviously, you'll have a bunch of small conference tournaments on the way as well, which you always have to watch out for. In some cases, bid stealers late next week, like from conferences like Conference USA and stuff like that. I don't anticipate too many of them, but you do have to watch out for it. So that's going on. So right now, we're in the thick of things here. March has started, and tournaments are starting to get underway. And then, of course, most of college basketball finishing their regular season. Next week, we'll have their conference tournaments. So things are picking up. Business is picking up in college basketball. Tonight, Virginia got a big win over Louisville, 67-66. Classic close game there. I'm trying to pull up my bubble teams here. Hang on. That's what I'm trying to do. I can find it. Not really finding it, so there it is right there. All right. Let's see where we're at. There we go. One thing to keep an eye on for next week, too, because you always want to look for teams that maybe you thought were going to be better this year from power conferences but weren't, but maybe they get hot at the end of the year, like St. John's, for instance. They've been very hot. You want to look out for those teams next week because they could be potential bid stealers. I'd watch out for Notre Dame. Notre Dame was expected to be a big team this year, and then they got too many injuries, but Bonzie Colson is going to be back. That could put Notre Dame in a position to run some games up next week. So keep that in mind going forward. That's always important too. So let's look at, again, we're going to just do this in general. By now, I mean, you look across the landscape, a lot of teams have settled their business. I think even Louisville has at this point. And so we're looking at true bubble teams. These are what you're looking at right now in my mind, okay? Syracuse, Kansas State, Baylor, Texas. I think Oklahoma will be fine now that they broke their losing streak, so I won't put them in there. Although a week ago I would have. Marquette, Nebraska, I wouldn't put Utah anywhere near it. Washington has fallen completely out. Washington needs a lot of help, so I wouldn't put them in there yet. I can't believe how far Washington's fallen. I think UCLA and USC are okay for right now. I think Florida's okay. I think Arkansas, A&M's okay. Okay, Mississippi State. St. Bonaventure. I won't say Boise State because I think they could potentially win there. I think they'll win the Mountain West, assuming. Well, I mean, they may not. I mean, even if they don't win the Mountain West, they could be in the mix. But I'm not ready to put Boise State in the mix yet. So, all right. So let me just recap that again. So I think the only real true bubble teams to watch for here are Syracuse, Kansas State, Baylor, and Texas, Marquette, Nebraska, Mississippi State. Yeah, those are your teams. Washington and Utah could play their way into things with a win or two next week. And, of course, wins this week. But those are your bubble teams. So, like I said, Washington and Utah need to win their last game this week and probably win at least 2 games next week in the Pac-12 tournament to really make a case to be even on the bubble at this point, based on their numbers. And that's assuming, and then they still probably need a little bit of help. So that's where they're at right now. Mississippi State. Now let's go to the teams I think are actually on the bubble. Mississippi State right now. Again, they're on the bubble. Let's see what they would need to have. The 58 BP strength of schedule 71, 44, 61. And the SEC is getting a lot of credit. So ideally, we're Mississippi State right now, because you're going to look at because they're going to take Alabama, they're going to take A&M, they're going to take Missouri. Yeah, I think Mississippi State's in a situation where they have to win on what's it, Saturday, whatever day they're playing this weekend, Saturday or Sunday, and maybe win at least a game next week, depending on who that game's against. It's like a game against a quality opponent, then winning that game will probably put them in, because they got the numbers, the record's good, the conference record's good, the strength of schedule is not great, but if they beat a good opponent in the SEC tournament, that'll probably help. I think they'll end up being able to sneak in a bid if they can win this weekend and at least one game next week. I think they'll sneak in a bid. St. Bonaventure, I think, is going to end up getting in. I think if they just handle their business, if they win on Saturday and they win next week, at least a game next week, I think they're a lock. If they lose this, their last regular season game, and then they lose next week, then I think they could probably fall out. But I think they're in much better positioning than they were the last time we talked about bubble teams. So right now, I think St. Bonaventure will get in. Mississippi State, I think, has a good chance. Again, I said Washington, Utah have to play their way back into the conversation. Nebraska, I think, is out right now. I think they need a lot. Their record's very much inflated. And the Big Ten is not getting enough, is not high regarded this year, unlike the SEC. So, they're going to play Michigan on Friday in one of the quarterfinals. So they got to win that game. They lose that game, I think they're out. They win it, they're still in the conversation. That's simple for them. Marquette, they need a lot of help. They have some wins, but they need a lot of help. They have to win their last regular season game. I think that's a must. And I think they have to win 2 games next week. I think that's where they're at. I think they're on the outside looking in right now, but that's what they have to do. It's that simple with Marquette. I think as far as Kansas State goes, I think they're in right now. If they lose their last regular season game, I think that might put them out. If they win it, then I think they'll still be in. And I think if they win one game in the Big 12 tournament, they'll lock it up. That's where I think they're at. If they lose their regular season finale, they'll probably have to win 2 games next week to lock it up. 1 game will probably be okay. 2 games, they lock it up. Baylor and Texas. I think Texas is probably in before Baylor. I think right now Texas would probably be in. But again, they're in a tenuous position where if they lose their regular season finale, and let's say they don't win their first Big 12 tournament game, I think that would put them out. If they lose Saturday and then win their first Big 12 tournament game, I think they'd still be in. If they win Saturday and then lose their first Big 12 game, I think they'd still be in. So if they go 1-1, I think they're in. If they go 0-2, I think they're out. But if they go 1-1, I think they'll be in unless somebody does something amazing and bid steals, But yeah, Baylor. I think Baylor probably has played their way in right now. They do face Kansas State on the weekend. If they win that game, I think they pretty much at that point would have secured a bid. Unless, again, even if they lose in the first round of the Big 12, I think they've done enough. But they'd be better off just winning 2 more games, winning against Kansas State and then winning their first Big 12 tournament game. If they do that, then I think they would have locked up a bid. So I think they're in very good position right now. Syracuse, I think they're out now. But I think if they win on Saturday, they're right back in. I think they're right on that line where when they win a game, they're in. When they lose a game, they're out. Now they're playing Clemson, which is a chance for them to get their first actual top 25 win. Now, Miami will probably be ranked in the top 25 if they beat North Carolina at North Carolina. That helps Syracuse. So, that will help them as far as their profile goes. Of course, Syracuse beat them. And Virginia Tech doing what it's done will help Syracuse too. They need to win. They really do need to win Saturday after losing to Boston College. They really do. If they win Saturday, I think they could still get in even with a loss next week in their first ACC tournament game. If they were to win Saturday and win their first ACC tournament game, I think they will lock up a bid because that'll be 20 wins. 1-1 might be enough to get them in. 2-0 definitely gets them in. 0-2 doesn't get them anything. They're out. So, but yeah, that's what a difference since we last did this, because a lot of teams have handled their business and are either should be ins or already in the field. So there's not too many teams on the actual bubble. There's a couple teams that could play their way onto the bubble, but there's not too many teams on the actual bubble right now. Most of the teams either handle their business, play their way off the bubble, and that's just where you're at. Again, we'll see if a teams like Utah and Washington can play their way back onto the bubble over the next couple of days. But that's how I see it right now. I think that it's not a very big bubble right now, which is good if you're on it because you don't have too many people to compete with. But of course, there's always potential for bid stealers too. So, Mike, your thoughts on where we're at here with some of these bubble teams?
Before I get into the bubble watch thing, I have to note this. It's okay. You keep coughing. Maybe you should drink some hot tea or something. Anyways,
Yeah.
I have to note this because we spent all that time going off on Sean Miller. There is a report by Sports Illustrated that says the Sean Miller thing, the accusation was actually incorrect.
Whoa.
In that, apparently the FBI had been wiretapping coaches, including Miller, starting in 2017. Apparently, by that point, DeAndre Ayton had already committed by months to Arizona. So this was based off apparently an intercepted phone call that occurred in 2017. But Ayton, we must stress, had apparently committed to Arizona in September 2016. So, apparently, the Sports Illustrated account is that Ayton is not the player on behalf of former ASM Sports employee Christian Dawkins allegedly sought a payment from Sean Miller. And Miller never pursued or made any payments to a recruit associated with ASM and sports employee Christian Dawkins. So this account has Miller actually complying with both the law and the NCAA recruiting rules. And this would also mean the same was allegedly true as of now for DeAndre Ayton. Did I get his name right? I don't know if DeAndre Ayton.
You did, yeah.
So, and by the way, apparently Arizona believes Miller. Otherwise, they wouldn't have let him make his strongly worded denial on campus at the University of Arizona.
Right.
So, if this is wrong, ESPN and their reputation is going to come under further fire. But as of right now, we don't know what's going on because these leaks that are happening in this FBI case are supposed to be under wraps. So now the judge is going to be looking for the person leaking this stuff who could be facing legal things, legal issues. But there's a reason why Sean Miller is back coaching, allegedly. It is because Arizona believes him when he says, I didn't do it. So, for those of you listeners who actually support Arizona, I don't have a horse in the race. I don't like Sean Miller as a coach. But according to one account, he was a dirty piece of shit. And according to the other account, he actually went by NCAA regulations, and DeAndre Ayton was already committed to Arizona. So we'll find out who's right, who's wrong. Those of you who are fans of Arizona have already made up your mind. That's fine. As for Bubble Watch, Florida State's in, Miami's in, NC State probably in. Louisville's probably in. Syracuse, I agree with you. Syracuse is out. At this point in time, Syracuse is out. They need to beat Clemson, who's in, and they need to beat a team or two in the ACC tournament. Otherwise, it's like, what are you even doing? You literally pissed away the rest of your season. Syracuse has a great defense, but not a great offense, and that has really killed them lately. Again, I take Texas over Baylor. I agree with you. Providence.
They're in.
Yeah, Providence is in.
Yeah, they're in.
They beat Villanova. If they beat Xavier, they're definitely in. Marquette. That one's a rough one. They've got some work to do.
Mm-hmm.
Marquette's pretty much like Syracuse. I'd expect to see Marquette and Syracuse in the NIT at this point. Let's see. Nebraska's out. Arizona State's in. USC. Oh, I'm still taking UCLA. I'd still take UCLA and I'd still take Washington, but good Lord, these Pac-12 teams are not making it easy to support any of them.
Nope.
Really. Fuck that conference. The Conference of Champions, where we have the greatest quality of play of all of mankind.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Arkansas is probably in.
Mm-hmm.
Florida is probably in. Texas A&M is probably in. I hate Alabama and I hate Missouri and I hate Mississippi State and I hate Georgia and I'm not going to talk about any of those. Although Alabama and Missouri are probably in. Let's see. St. Mary's is in despite myself, despite my bias against them. Middle Tennessee is probably going to go in, but they're probably going to win the tournament. Who knows? St. Bonaventure and Boise State are really the only two teams who might get in, but if either of those teams win the tournament, look, for St. Bonaventure, that's a huge task. It's a huge task considering Rhode Island. and the year they're having. Because, look, St. Bonaventure could get in, but Rhode Island might actually be the at-large.
Right.
They could get an at-large bin because they've been that impressive. But you never know. That's all I got to say about that.
I mentioned St. John's and Notre Dame as potential bid stealers. I want to mention one more, St. Joe's. They beat. I've thought they were a better team all year. They just beat Rhode Island by like 30 the other night. They're playing really well right now. They've done it before. I'd add St. Joe's to that list of teams that can make a run and steal a bid. So St. Joe's, St. John's. I'd put Georgetown on that list too, to be honest, as well, and Notre Dame. Those would be teams I'd watch out for to steal bids next week, because they all have the capability. And with Notre Dame, they're getting their players back, so keep an eye out for that next week. Obviously, there'll be. I mean, look, it's March, so all games are going to be big now. End of the regular season, of course, Duke Carolina on Saturday. Lots of big games this weekend. Conference tournaments start over the weekend. Of course, a lot of the big ones will be next week. Big Ten is underway already. They'll keep going into to the end of the weekend. Smaller conferences will get underway, and then, of course, have some big finishes early on next week as well. So every game will be big. There'll be lots of action. We'll talk about it along the way. And, we'll finish it off, and we'll talk about it along the way. So, and go from there. But yeah, so that will be as we go through next week. And then, of course, the next weekend we'll be doing brackets and all that kind of stuff. So good times. Good times. All right. With that being said, we are done for the night. Again, as always, as we wind down the show, we can ask you to continue to send in your comments, reactions, opinions, questions, anything regarding the show, topic ideas, or breaking news items you want us to cover. Just general question. Any of these things you can do by email, Facebook, and Twitter. You can email us at itspotlight401@gmail.com. Again, as always, follow us on Twitter at itspotlight401. Use the hashtag itspotlight401 for anything you tweet regarding the show. And, of course, find us on Facebook. You can search for us under the title In the Spotlight 401 on Facebook. And then once you find our fan page, make sure you like it so you can follow it anytime you want. And again, Twitter and Facebook is what you want to follow in regards to our show, so you can get the latest information about the show, especially when it comes to scheduling and whatnot. Very, very, very important. Again, if you'd like to keep up with the show and look back at classic episodes, you have two ways which to do it. You can stream us anytime on Google Plus and YouTube. Just search In the Spotlight 401. And you can stream every episode of ever produced on Google Plus and YouTube from mid-October 2015 all the way up to tonight's current episode. So there's episodes you can stream anytime you want on Google Plus and YouTube. Just search In the Spotlight 401. If streaming is not your thing, or maybe interested in older episodes of the show, or maybe just want to listen to us on the go or listen to us in general, you can check us out on our main host sites, Podbean and iTunes. Search In the Spotlight 401. And when you do, you'll be taken to our show pages on both those sites, where you'll find every episode we've ever done in the over 7 years we've been doing the show, including all of our Google Plus and YouTube episodes. Our recent episodes transfer into audio format for your convenience. Every episode we've ever done in audio format for your convenience, for you to listen to anytime you want, whether it's on the go or at home, or just to keep up with current episodes, look back at past episodes. Whatever the case may be, you can do all that and more on our main host sites, Podbean and iTunes. Search In the Spotlight 411. So Google Plus, YouTube, Podbean, iTunes, your ways to keep up with the show and look back at classic episodes. Again, the search In the Spotlight 411 on all those sites. I want to thank Mike for being here tonight. Thank you, Mike.
I have a headache and I'm going to bed, so it's time for bed.
Thank myself and our great show. Pat myself on my back, and thank all of you for your continued support and contributions to the show. Thank you so much for watching. To those that will be watching, listening to this later, thank you to you as well. That is it for tonight. Again, remember, changes next week. We start at 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern time, not 9. I'm going to be doing the first part of the show by myself until Mike joins me. That's the way I got to do it. because this ran way too late for me. So, and what else? Oh, again, one show only on Tuesdays starting next week, at least for the time being. So keep that in mind as well. One show a week. Again, 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern time, starting this coming Tuesday. And we'll do all the usual stuff we have to do, sports, entertainment, wrestling, all that stuff. We'll do it. We'll make it through. And what else I gotta say? And remember, if I am doing the show by myself, just keep in mind that there might be times when something pops up. I have to do something. I might have to duck out. It's the way it has to be. So, you know, when that happens, I'll turn the microphone off. I'll turn the camera off, and these guys and girls just have to stand pat for a few minutes, just until things get, you know, situated and whatnot. So, so keep that in mind going forward as well here as we are on, baby, duty and such.
Duty.
So, yes. Thank you, Mike. I know I was going to finish. So yeah, so that's all the important information you need to know. Again, one show a week starting this coming Tuesday, which will be March the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 6th. So again, we'll do all the usual stuff we have to do. We'll talk conference tournaments, end of the regular season. We'll talk wrestling. We'll talk entertainment, all that on Tuesday. And really every show here as we go forward. So I was going to show the baby, but she's feeding and it's late, so we'll do that next week. Because I was trying to time it, I was trying to get through the goodbyes and everything, the shout outs, and she was starting to wake up. I was hoping to time it that way, but it didn't work out that way. So she actually woke up right towards the end of the show, but she had to feed, so that kind of, so we'll just do that on Tuesday. But anyway, with that being said, that is it. I hope you all have a great rest of your night, a great weekend, a great start to your week next week. We'll see you back here this coming Tuesday, March the 6th, 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern time here, streaming live on YouTube. I hope you all stay safe. The East Coast is going to get a little bit of a storm, so stay safe. And we'll see you next week. Good night, everybody.